Coming up.
We heard from Trudeau government officials last week that they were incredibly proud of the $9 million Billionaire Row accommodations that they got for Justin Trudeau's pal, and said it never occurred to them that it would be optically bad to spend $9 million on a place on Billionaire Row for a member of the Liberal elite.
In your professional opinion, this is not a fixer-upper, is it? Move-in ready.
That is not a fixer-upper.
Sir, this is move-in ready luxury, isn't it? In a heritage building.
And I would challenge any Conservative to say why Mr. Mulrooney, Mr. Harper, and even Mr. Diefenbaker felt that it was important to have this kind of representation in New York City.
Do either of the witnesses have knowledge as where the current Canadian representative to the United Nations resides?
I can answer that question. I do have knowledge.
Please go ahead.
Should I share where he resides?
This guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
The mighty OGGO, our clerk this morning from Global Affairs, says, "Good morning. Mr. Clark's staff has confirmed that he would be pleased to make himself available to appear before the committee September 4th or September 12th, if these dates could work or will work with them. If not, we can find another date after he returns from his leave, September 3rd. So, colleagues, if it's okay with everyone here, I'll seek UC to leave it with myself and the clerk to either work on September 12th for his appearance or at a later regular OGGO date. We'll start our 6-minute round with Mr. Barrett. Please go ahead, sir.
I appreciate your comments at the opening of the meeting. It's interesting to hear that we've had a change of heart by Justin Trudeau's $9 million man, Tom Clark, and that he is now, after having previously said he would appear, and then saying he wouldn't appear, and then saying that he was on leave, and then when his office was contacted by media, they were told that he was, in fact, in office. Now saying that he is willing to meet. So we have very disingenuous at best responses from Mr. Clark. It raises all kinds of questions about who the direction came from for Mr. Clark not to appear as he had originally committed to this week. And this is, of course, in the context of a $9 million residence on Billionaire Row that is going to serve one person and duplicate existing space that the Office of Canada's representative in New York already has. And we heard from Trudeau government officials last week that they were incredibly proud of the $9 million Billionaire Row accommodations that they got for Justin Trudeau's pal, and said it never occurred to them. It never occurred to them that it would be optically bad to spend $9 million on a place on Billionaire Row for a member of the Liberal elite, which I think that response, they're being unaware how out of touch this was, says everything you need to know after 9 years of Justin Trudeau and his NDP Liberal government. Mr. Clark had agreed to come to be here today, and he backed out, and now he's saying he will come on one of those dates. I will say, Chair, that let's preempt the conversation we'll have on the date that's selected, that if Mr. Clark doesn't come on that date, that he'll have exhausted every reasonable courtesy that this committee could extend him, and that as the motion did pass unanimously for him to be here, that he must be summoned because he will be in defiance of this committee's wishes. It's unanimous wish, and of course, will have demonstrated himself to again not tell the truth, just like he did yesterday when he said he was on leave, but in fact was not. So we'll wait and see. But it's clear that this is an effort by the government to try and delay and distract from this latest $9 million scandal. So I have a question for our witnesses. In as brief an answer as possible, is Midtown East appropriate for representational space for a G20 country in your estimation?
Hi. Thank you for the question. The quick answer is yes, it is. About 95% of the consulates in New York City are located in this neighborhood or just abutting this neighborhood. There's about 136 consulates and all but 7 are located there.
And to the other witness, sir, do you agree?
Yes, I agree 100%. The Midtown East and the Midtown Corridor in general, all of the examples we mentioned earlier in our opening remarks are based in that area, within about 15 minutes from the UN.
Okay, and just for my understanding, 466 Lexington Avenue is in that area. Just an audible yes would be, or no. You indicated yes, sir?
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay. So that's where the Consulate General of Canada in New York is located, is there. And so when we talk about the space that G20 and G7 countries have, we have space there. We have it in that key space. We have space that in 2018, the Government of Canada, financed by the taxes of Canadians, paid for upgraded space, representational space, meeting space, where meals could be served, events could be held, and meetings could be had at that address, at 466 Lexington Avenue on the 20th floor. But what we have now is a $9 million condo, and that condo is supposed to replace another condo that the Government of Canada had procured. So my question is, what increased value will Canadian taxpayers get by having a duplicate, having a second location that's in a desirable neighborhood? Obviously, other countries are spending big sums of money. I'm not accountable to their taxpayers. I'm accountable to Canadians, as is this Liberal government. What is the increased value that we get by having a second space?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While I can't speak to the value of a second space versus a first space, it is my understanding that there is an office space and a residence space, and that the residence space generally has a facilities requirement as well to be performing as a mission asset. And so needing that space sounds like the right choice for the Government of Canada. The initial
just quickly, sir, what was your commission on this sale? Just the number, if you could.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the question. The commission was pre-negotiated as part of the RFP process with the Government of Canada.
And what was the number, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The commission that is received by agents during any sales process is always received by the selling party, not by the buyer's side. So the seller's party paid out a commission of 4% of the transactional value to our firm.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Mr. Kuzmierczuk, please go ahead.
Every time now I hear conservative colleagues like Mr. Barrett speak, I'm reminded of the fact they made a video recently called Canada Our Home, in which they badly manipulated the truth and badly manipulated Canadians. And in that same tradition, I see Mr. Barrett mischaracterizing the communication between Mr. Tom Clark and the clerk. And so I wanted, through you, Mr. Chair, I wanted to ask the clerk to clarify and confirm that Mr. Tom Clark, from the beginning, was open to meeting with the committee, but simply was not available on August 27th and was looking for an alternate date. Can the clerk, through you, Mr. Chair, kindly confirm that for the record? What that original correspondence was from Mr. Clark, or excuse me, from GAC.
Well, the original email that I received on motion was July 24th. August 8th, there was an email that stated, in Mark Olivier, MOG, our clerk's absence, to inform you that Tom Clark, Consul General of Canada in New York, would be available to appear on Tuesday, August 27th, 2024. GAC is waiting for official invitation to be sent to them. So that was on August 8th. We received an email from the clerk de jure, as I jokingly call it, because MOG is away on vacation, that Mr. Clark, or Global Affairs, confirmed that he would appear on the 27th. Then on the 24th, we received information that he would not be appearing. And then yesterday, there was a bit of convoluted back and forth between the clerk and GAC. At the end, it came out, wait till September 3rd, we will discuss a new date. And then this morning, we received confirmation Mr. Clark would be available on the 4th or the 12th of September.
So, but as I understand it, because I've seen various comments on social media and elsewhere, Mr. Clark, through GAC, was working with our committee to find a time to appear at this committee. Is that correct?
The email I received from the clerk on the 8th said he had GAC had confirmed his appearance. On the 24th, they withdrew it. And then yesterday was, we'll see. Then it was, when he's back September 3rd, we'll find a date. Then this morning, we received confirmation of available dates. So it appears that it did confirm they're not available. Now, this morning, our 2 dates made available.
Yes, he's made himself available to this committee to appear. I wanted to get that on the record. I wanted to ask our witnesses here today, the listing price for the unit was 9.3 million Canadian. The government paid 8.84 million Canadian, which is $500,000 off the price. Can I ask how we were able to knock that price down?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the question. The unit itself is located in the landmark portion of the Steinway factory building, a building that dates back about 100 years. And the development had originally seen some relatively high pricing and hadn't been selling at the pace they were looking to sell. So they were starting to reduce the pricing, which brought the pricing of the unit into the scope of parameters that the government of Canada was seeking to stay within. At that point, the unit that was selected by the client was the last remaining residence in this landmark tower, and as such, for the developer would be considered a success if they were able to dispose of the last remaining unit. So they were friendly to the negotiation position that we took for the government of Canada.
I'm looking at, you had visited 21 properties, as I understand, were actually looked at. It started as 39 properties, went down to 21 properties that were looked at. The value or the price varied between $8 million and $21 million. The Canadian government chose pretty much the lowest price property. Do you feel this was a good deal for Canadians and taxpayers?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the question. As per my opening remarks, we believe as real estate agents that this was a very attractive end price for a very attractive asset in a rarefied part of the city that is, per Mr. Miller's commentary, frequented by 95% of the government dignitaries from other foreign organizations. The government of Canada was able to secure the asset well below the average price that other foreign governments pay for their assets. So it's our estimation that it was a very attractive price.
Mr. Abbo, do you expect, in your experience, do you expect the value of this property to go up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the question. We can't speculate, but we can certainly say that the Steinway building, as an example, is considered by many in the industry as one of the finest examples of modern architecture. They're certainly not going to be building many more of them, and there is only limited amount of space there. It is a prime location, so given that real estate is primarily around location and space and availability, we believe it will substantially increase in price over the years.
And
I'm sorry. We are past our time, Mr. Kuzmierczak.
Mr. Abbo, I don't know if we've gone over this already, but what precisely were the rules that were problematic at the former location?
Thank you for the question. So I can't speak to those rules exactly, as I was not the holder of the apartment, nor restricted by those rules. But in general, co-op boards are more restrictive. It is very focused on a specific type of family and family lifestyle, and not necessarily suitable for a public residence of the sorts of a mission of Canada.
Now, at the Consular General's property, there are sort of these two separate roles. One, obviously, is this diplomatic role when it comes to entertaining other diplomats and high-profile officials and having events, that sort of thing. The other role is responding to the needs of Canadian citizens, particularly emergency travel requests. Are members of the public, so Canadian citizens who need emergency assistance with travel documents, that sort of thing, are they able to access the new property without any barrier?
Thank you for the question.
I have to interrupt. Just a very brief answer, please.
The condo, the new condo, has very strict security measures and several points of entry that are supervised. And so they would need to be cleared by the residents of the condo in order to access it. But if they were cleared, they certainly could access it.
Okay, Thanks very much. Mr. Bachrach, I'm glad you brought up the issue of the condo rules. Global Affairs actually promised us at our last meeting to have some information back on those rules that day or the very next day. I checked with our clerk yesterday, and they still have not gone back to us. So I'm glad you've brought it up with Global Affairs. If you are watching this today, and I assume you have, you owe us those documents. You promised us those documents, or at least a response about it. So I hope you will get to providing it to this valued committee. Thank you for that time for a paid announcement. Mr. Brock, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm going to be directing questions to you, Mr. Abbo, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I understand that your real estate firm is currently the listing agent of 550 Park Avenue, Unit 12E, the existing Consul General premises, and I also understand that you played a part in the purchase of 57th Street. Is that accurate?
Thank you for the question. That is indeed accurate. We proceeded in two RFP processes, one for the purchase of the new official residence and one for the disposal of existing residence.
Thank you. I just wanted to confirm that. Now, Government of Canada officials, Justin Trudeau's government, Global Affairs, have confirmed that the purchase of West 57 was predicated on the fact that the Park Avenue property required, in essence, over $2 million in renovations. That it was originally purchased in 1961. It had renovations completed in 1982. And it was good enough for 19 previous consul generals, except for Tom Clark, who wanted a different location and was granted that. Now, I think it's disingenuous, and I think it's actually a lie to Canadians when Justin Trudeau and his government are claiming that this property was essentially a fixer-upper. I think that could be the furthest from the truth, and I'm going to quote from your listing page for Park Avenue. a perfect example of the grand golden age apartments of the 1920s. This masterpiece is full of volume, scale, and ideal circulation. A great room with 11-foot ceilings and large windows that frame exposures to the north and east invite you into the heart of the home, while the adjacent dining room could comfortably host down a dinner of 18. Designed for hospitality, a commercial kitchen and a butler's pantry are further complemented by direct access to a separate staff office and storage room, as well as in-unit laundry, a den library just off the entrance gallery, as well as a powder room complete the northern wing. Along the southern corridor, 4 bedrooms, all with ensuite bathrooms and walk-in closets, and 2 with corner exposures offer privacy and comfort. With its high ceilings, large windows, herringbone, walnut floors, and ample storage throughout, this residence offers the perfect framework for generation living and is truly a space to behold. That, sir, is your listing. That is hardly indicative of a New York City condo adjacent to Billionaire's Row that demands $2 million worth of renovations. Would you agree with that?
Thank you for the question. It is a wonderful residence, and it will serve its owners very well that has the needs that that residence will offer up. If those needs are no longer met, those residents will probably want to find another.
In your professional opinion, this is not a fixer-upper, is it? Move-in ready.
Opinion, that is not a fixer-upper.
Sir, this is move-in ready luxury, isn't it? In a heritage building.
It is move-in ready. It's a wonderful residence. It's in a heritage building. That is correct.
Correct. Now, did the government offer you any specifics on how they were going to spend $2 million worth of taxpayer dollars for renovations to Park Avenue? Did they offer any details?
We have not received any of that information.
Of course not. Did they even mention it to you, that one of the rationales for looking for a new location adjacent to Central Park in Billionaire's Row was because of the $2 million expected to renovate this luxurious condo?
It was shared as part of the criteria, yes.
They shared that with you?
They shared that due renovation costs, it made more sense financially to pursue another residence.
Okay. They also told us at committee that it wasn't accessible. And when I drilled down on the government as to what that meant, they had to widen the entranceway to a bathroom. That could have easily been done on Park Avenue as well, couldn't it?
It is sometimes difficult to do work in co-op buildings, especially. Part of the reason
well, is
why
it,
the
sir?
cost is so high.
It's not impossible, is it?
It could be done.
It's not impossible, is it? Answer, please.
It is not impossible.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Bach. Ms. Damoff, welcome to OGGO.
You know, in 2021, we passed the Accessible Canada Act. Now, accessibility in these residences around the world should not have to be legislated. It should be the right thing to do. But the fact is that we need to make these residents accessible to people with disabilities, and to ignore that fact. And I would argue changing a doorway in a heritage building is not as straightforward as the Conservative members would lead people to believe, especially in a condo building. So, you know, the Conservatives bought this, the previous residence under Mr. Diefenbaker in 1961. And oddly enough, under 2 Conservative prime ministers, Prime Minister Mulroney and Prime Minister Harper, they felt the need that it was important to have someone in New York conducting business for Canada. And all of the sudden, they're trying to portray this as a political decision that somehow we're wasting taxpayers' dollars. I would say at $200 billion a year, it's a good deal for Canadians to have someone there who's representing our interests. And I would challenge any Conservative to say why Mr. Mulroney, Mr. Harper, and even Mr. Diefenbaker felt that it was important to have this kind of representation in New York City. I have a question for Mr. Miller. You have talked about the need for appraisals to be for neutrality in valuations and the need to not have politics involved when you're doing that. I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit, please.
Thank you so much for the question. I'd be happy to. Neutrality in valuation, for example, our firm does a tremendous amount of matrimonial work between parties, and we're actually hired by both parties because we take the neutrality position very seriously. And neutrality essentially means that any appearance of non-neutrality would appear to, the appearance of favoring one party over another is toxic or poison for the credibility of the final valuation. We've found that over our experience that has resulted in much better outcomes for the parties if the person providing the valuation is not influenced or pressured by either party.
And Mr. Abo, just briefly, because I only have a minute left, you went through, and we've heard some of the requirements that the Government of Canada needed for this property, including accessibility, but there are many other ones. I suspect that narrows down the availability of residences significantly. I wonder if you could talk about that, and also whether you feel the Government of Canada made a good decision in selling the previous property because it didn't meet those guidelines and required significant repairs, and purchasing the property that we did purchase in New York City.
In about 20 seconds.
Thank you for the question. So briefly said, as we talked about earlier, there were 39 properties that we were able to find for consideration in the entire region or sphere of influence that the Canadian government decided to be in. 39. That's not a lot in, tens of thousands of apartments available in the area. So it was not easy to find, but I think they were very successful in their final decision. And when it comes to whether or not it was a wise decision to dispose of the current residents, we believe now is a good time for that, and we're happy to participate in it. So we think both decisions were smart moves driven by criteria already set by the Global Affairs.
Thank you very much. Right on time. Mrs. Block, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I will let you know that I will be splitting my time with my colleague, Ms. Kusi. Mr. Abo, you mentioned in your opening remarks, and again in one of your most recent responses, that there was an initial list of 39 properties. Can you table that list with the committee and include the locations and prices, please?
Thank you for the question. We'd be happy to.
Thank you very much. And quickly, I'm going to follow up on a couple of lines of questioning by a couple of my colleagues. Mr. Abo, I thought I heard you say that you were made aware by GAC of the need for renovations, but not to the extent that they have indicated to the committee. Can you tell me what the impact on a unit, on the sale price of a unit would be, knowing that there are significant repairs needed for that?
Thank you for the question. I think the easy way to answer it is that as you tour a new property, depending on the requirements of the buyer, those repairs will either be important or lesser important depending on the final use of the property. In the specific case of 550 Park Avenue, the pricing that has been set went through a very rigorous process that we always apply to any residence that's being posted for sale, and included in that consideration is the potential need for repairs to be decided by the final purchaser, of course.
So really quickly, the price included what GAC had indicated as the need for $2.6 million in repairs. The price set on that unit reflects that?
The price set for the unit reflects that there is a potential for what we call upgrades to the unit.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. My first question is for either witness. Do either of the witnesses have knowledge as to where the current Canadian representative to the United Nations resides?
I can answer that question. I do have knowledge.
Please go ahead.
Should I share where he resides? Okay. Is that public information? I'm not sure if...
Well, if it's the same information that I have, it's that he currently resides in the Park Avenue residence of the former the former residence of the same building of the former residence of the Consul General. So this is my understanding, and this is my understanding that it is, and I'm seeing you nod, so that it seems to be you're in agreement that you are. So it's very interesting to me. Does the current Canadian representative to the United Nations have any plans to sell this resident, to leave this building and find another residence? Are you aware of that?
The question. I believe that's a answer best provided by Global Affairs. I am not aware of a current plan to dispose of it.
Interesting. It's just very interesting to me that this previous residence was not good enough for the Consul General, yet somehow it remains good enough for the Canadian representative to the United Nations. There just seems to be some type of disconnect there, that this residence was good enough for one Canadian representative in NYC, but not good enough for the Consul General. Very interesting. Mr. Chair, I'm just going to summarize in saying how very disappointed I am in this government to see value for money for Canadians comparative to the previous Harper government. The previous Harper government sold the Dublin residence for $10 million. We sold the entire Hong Kong mission for $86 million in 2016. We sold McDonald House for $530 million. This was above asking price, unifying two buildings and purchasing the house next to Canada House for a savings of $250 million. And finally, Mr. Chair, I'll note that we listed our Coral Gables, the official residence in Miami, a residence I have visited, for $5.2 million. In closing, Mr. Chair, I'll say, under the previous administration, the Harper government, we sold more than 80 diplomatic properties for more than $720 million. This is the type of value for money that Canadians deserve, and Liberals should come to understand this. Thank you very much.
You're here.
Thank you, Mrs. Kusi. We'll finish up with Ms. Atwin, please. Go ahead.
And Mr. Abo, the property listing for the condominium at the 111 West 57th Street describes the property's modern conveniences within grand spaces, and describes various amenities to which residents have access, such as an 82-foot swimming pool with private cabanas. To what extent do property evaluations and appraisals consider the value of such amenities in assessing market value?
Thank you for the question. I think that maybe Mr. Miller will want to answer that on the appraisal side. From the broker's side, and we can talk to that most new developments use the amenities and additional facilities as extra ways to entice residents to come live with them rather than in the neighboring building. And so it's used primarily to create additional value. I would say the caliber with some of these facilities also do stand the test of time and will potentially help in maintaining value of a residence as well.
Great. And Mr. Miller?
Yes. Think of the amenities as a suite of things that help the property be established at a certain value point within the market. It is, usually properties of a high caliber have a certain minimum number of amenities that are expected by potential buyers. And in the Midtown location, for example, about 85% of the new development condo purchases over the last decade have been by international buyers, 85%, and that would be just the opposite downtown. So there's something about the amenity suite that's being offered in Midtown that is attracting this market.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And so on 21st of August, our last committee meeting, we had officials from GAC, and they estimated that the life cycle of this residence would be between 55 and 60 years, and that its value would appreciate during this time. Would it be reasonable to assume that the new official residence at 111 West 57th Street will appreciate at a rate higher than inflation over this period? And could you possibly explain that?
Thank you for the question. So I would be in agreement that because of the restraint on supply in the market, especially in the new development space itself, that the runway or the period, 50, 60 years down the road, it would be a reasonable estimate to assume that the price growth in the property in the long run would be at or above inflation levels.
Great. I think that's all my questions for now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks very much. Mr. Miller, we'll book you for 50 years from now to see if your prediction holds true. Colleagues, if you want to put that on your calendar for 2074. Witnesses, thank you very much for joining us today. We appreciate it. Everyone will get back to you once we talk to everyone involved regarding Mr. Clark. With that, we are adjourned.